Now to Sudan, where fighting between rival military groups has crippled the capital city Khartoum since April 15. Ceasefire talks are due to resume in Saudi Arabia today. The fightings between the army loyal to General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Sudan's de facto head of state since a coup in 2021, and the paramilitaries of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, which used to be known as the Janjaweed. The RSF is loyal to another general and former warlord known as Hemedti. The UN's migration agency says that as at the 5th of May, 700,000 people had been internally displaced because of the fighting, and an estimated 3.7 million people in Sudan were already internally displaced before the latest conflict. Siddiq Yousif is a veteran of opposition politics in Sudan. He was a member of the Central Council of the Forces of Freedom and Change, a broad coalition that came together in 2019 in Sudan to push for a transition to civilian rule. I spoke with Siddiq Yousif from his home in Khartoum earlier.
Thank you very much.
Siddiq, could you tell us where you are and what the situation in Khartoum is currently?
I'm staying in west of Khartoum and Umdurman town, which is west of Khartoum. And I think the situation is, fighting is still going on. I think about 3 or 4 minutes ago, they were bombing. Whenever there is an airplane flying, shooting at the plane starts. And retaliation from there and this way and that way. But where I am staying, I'm a bit far from where the fighting.
We have heard about some ceasefires since the 15th of April. Have they made much difference to the actual fighting that you're seeing on the ground?
I think yes. As far as ceasefire is declared for about 3 days or 7 days, the shooting starts to be less than what it used to be in the first days, the first 2 weeks. Now we are in the 4th week. Now the shooting is less, but the situation is worse because all the hospitals, nearly 80% of the hospitals are closed. All the banks are closed. All the main shopping areas are closed. There is no fuel in the fuel stations. So people start buying fuel at very expensive prices to move from place to place. And movement is very difficult. Most of the shops are closed. The shops which are open, they raise the prices, very high prices. During the next 3 weeks, there will be no goods in the shops.
The UN has reported that the number of internally displaced people has gone up a lot over the last few days.
Yeah.
Are you seeing locals trying to leave Khartoum because of the situation you just described to us?
Oh, yes. In fact, some residential areas, especially in Khartoum, are now empty of people. People are going either to Egypt or internally in the different towns within the Sudan, away from the capital, but not in Darfur. Darfur is a very bad situation. In fact, they are nearly as much fighting as in Khartoum area. Most of the people who are financially able to travel go to Egypt or Ethiopia, but most of the people go to different areas in the Sudan.
In the protests in 2019, people formed neighbourhood groups called resistance committees. Have they been revived since the 15th of April?
They are not involved in a conflict. They are involved in protecting the people in the residential areas.
Yes.
They keep watching during the nights. They make sure that bread is available. Bakeries are working. Shops have supplies. They are trying to do a lot of help, especially on medical side and on foodstuff side. They are active in organizing humanitarian aid to the people.
Siddiq, has there been any progress in the talks between the two sides at the moment?
There is no releases, any official release of the talks. But people are hoping that the negotiations will come to a longer ceasefire, 15 to 1 month. But there is no official release up to now or any leaks from what is happening in Jeddah.
Siddiq, you said that the resistance committees have been trying to protect local people. Could you give us a sense of what the ordinary Sudanese person thinks about this conflict and what they're trying to do about it, if it's possible to do anything?
As far as people in the capital, people can do nothing except to survive. They are fighting to survive, and that is what the resistance groups are doing, helping people to solve the problems of living, medical support, and things like that. But in other towns outside Khartoum, yes, the people are demonstrating, doing a lot of civil fights, organizing demonstrations to protest against the war. And everybody, in fact, thinks that the war is between two factions which are running for power. And there is no interest, no program about who is putting a program for development or for security in the Sudan. All the fighting is for power only, which faction will rule the Sudan. And the people generally are against both parties or fighting parties.
Siddiq Yousif, you were a member of the Central Council of the Forces of Freedom and Change, the broad coalition of groups that came together in 2019 to push for civilian rule. Could you tell us a little bit about that movement and what has become of it?
What is now going on? There is a lot of split within this group. Their influence among the people has dwindled a lot. They don't have any large influence as there was in 2020 and 21.
Siddiq, could you help us to understand the situation with all the different militias and armed groups in Sudan?
So the problem of arms in the Sudan, especially small arms, is very terrible. I think people are estimating about 3 million armed militias are outside the official army or the official armed groups. In fact, it's a big worry for all the Sudanese about the future. We don't want to be like what is happening in Libya or in Syria.
Siddiq, do you continue to believe that a return to civilian government in Sudan is something that could happen before too long?
It depends. We hope for the international pressure to stop this war, and so that we can go to activities for returning to power, a civilian rule and things like that. But it will take a long time because the mass movement, the leadership of the mass movement is in the center, in the capital. And people now cannot even move. So there are no large political activities to mobilize the people for democratic rule. It will take a long time. But we are very optimistic that the people of Sudan can retain the democratic government.
Siddiq, you say it's going to take a long time, and the situation in Khartoum does sound really terrible at the moment. But you personally have been involved for a long time in the struggle for civilian government and against military rule. Could you tell us a little bit about your own personal history? I gather it goes all the way back to joining the Sudanese Communist Party in 1948.
Yes. In fact, the situation in Sudan has got a long history of coup d'etat, things like that. 1958, there was a military coup, which stayed for 6 years. In October 1964, we succeeded in overthrowing that military group, but another coup happened in 69, stayed until 85. Another one started in 89 and started for, I think, up to now. Since 89, we are still fighting for a democratic transition for the Sudan. So that is life.
Along the way, you have been taken prisoner and subjected to torture. Could you tell us what it is that makes it possible for you to keep your hope and your fighting spirit for civilian government alive amidst all those terrible situations that you've described to us?
We have to fight for peaceful transition, for a democratic life in the Sudan, and it will take a long time. It might not be achieved during my lifetime, but still that is the hope of the political people of the Sudan. Yes, I personally suffered, yes. I stayed about 12 years in prison. Some people stayed for more than that in other countries.
And how old are you now, Siddiq?
92. 92.
Well, it sounds like your passion for progress in Sudan is still very strong, and we hope that before your 93rd birthday, you get that civilian rule that you have been working so hard for.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you. And I hope that we can succeed in that.
Siddiq Yousif, thanks so much for speaking with us on Sunday Extra.
All right, thank you.
That was the very sprightly 92-year-old Siddiq Yousif, a widely respected opposition figure in Sudan, who was a member of the Central Council of the Forces of Freedom and Change in 2019 and has been an activist since 1948 when he joined Sudan's Communist Party.
ABC RN helps you understand the world. Find more of our stories on the ABC Listen app.